And voters still cast their ballots, as we know, with their wallets and their purses in nearly every poll. The economy, still the most important issue for voters across all demographics. And still some key races can be determined not by necessarily who you're voting for, but possibly about who you're voting against. Joining us to discuss some key races, CEO of Wallin Opinion Research, Justin Wallin. Great to see you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Jen. Great to see you.
You know, this might be the case in New York City. Heavily Democratic jurisdiction. The majority of voters do not appear to like either Democrat on that ticket. We're talking about a socialist. The other is a Democrat running as an independent because he lost the primary to the socialist. Are we going to see the largest city in America, Justin, run by a socialist Democrat?
The short answer to that is, unless the polls are wildly wrong, yes. New York City is going to be governed by an openly socialist and, to all intents and purposes, anti-Israel mayoral candidate. And it's fascinating because, yes, it's a sea of imperfect candidates. By all accounts, New Yorkers are not thrilled with their set of choices, but they're going to make a choice. And I think the key message here for the Democratic Party is, are voters making a choice about going far left, or are they making a choice about affordability? And I suspect I know it's the first one. Mamdani's message was excellent. New York just costs too much to live in, and New Yorkers resonate with that, except for the most wealthy.
Right, but the way he thinks he's going to make it more affordable, as a capitalist society, everyone knows nothing is free. There's no free lunch. There's no free rides. There's no allowing the government to have price controls at grocery stores, price controls on rent. Those, as we know, historically, will make everything. That actually increases inflation, as we know.
Well, I think the Democratic Party and New Yorkers in general, and Mamdani actually, need to look very closely at the success rate of really hard left progressive candidates who have won in deeply blue spaces. Look at San Francisco and Los Angeles district attorneys. Highly progressive policies that were enacted failed miserably, and they were ejected from their seats and replaced by much more right-leaning candidates. So in practice, this is going to be very interesting to see play out. Even in the deepest blue of blue, I don't think it's going to be palatable.
Right. And we know these races obviously serve as a referendum, for the party that's not at the White House. So the Democratic Party, which seems to still be searching for some cohesion and messaging. So do they need to win by a large margin in places like Virginia and New Jersey, those two closely watched races?
Yeah, they really do. I mean, in these off-cycle elections, as you know, the tide tends to go against the party that's in power. And if the Democratic Party really is accurate that there's a swell of discontent at the head of the United States with the Trump administration, then these races are going to be won by wide margins. And that's really the takeaway. Are these races that close? That probably shouldn't be if the messaging of the Democratic Party is correct. And the reality is they're just not, by all the polls, they're just not far and away. Most of them are within the margin of error.
That's exactly right. How do you see the governor's race playing out there with Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey?
Well, that's a wonderful example of it. New Jersey is an interesting place because it's reliably blues, reliably Democratic for the presidency. But governors go back and forth. And in this case, it's too close to tell. There's absolutely no way to tell who's going to come out on top. And there should be a margin. If New Jersey is reflective of America's tempo, which in some ways it is, because it goes back and forth, I think it's a good barometer. Then if the Democratic message is correct, that Americans are fed up with the administration's policies and really looking for an out, then the margin here really should be well outside the margin of error in favor of the Democratic candidate, and it's not.
We had some polls that were just wildly off during last year's election cycle. Is there a reason why we're seeing so much discrepancy, do you think, in polling these days?
Yes, that's a long conversation. But the key here for poll watchers is to look at averages, because that weeds out the outliers. There are a lot of outliers, and that's a challenge. There are challenges with methodology. The key issues with my particular world are finding people who are willing to talk. And if you do it correctly, then it actually comes back. The funny thing about correct polls is most of those are internal. And a lot of the public polling, which we see and we go by as barometers, those actually have to deal with price restrictions.
Interesting.
So,
You mean, when you say internal polls, you mean the candidates conducting their own polls. Those tend to be very accurate. I agree with you on that. Now, there's already been plenty of early voting. So how important is today? What does a big turnout at the polls mean for both parties? Who's likely to benefit?
In this case, if we have a big turnout, I think Republicans are going to benefit because the mantra is that frustration and anger drives turnout. And if this is the case, as it typically is in a midterm, then the opposing party is going to prevail because of that. I don't think that's the dynamic today. I think if we see a higher turnout, it's going to benefit Republicans. But I could very well be wrong. But by all intents and purposes, the way this is panning out, I think that Republicans are actually, even if they lose in races, I think they're positioned pretty doggone well. We're not seeing this enormous, widespread disaffection that we're apparently supposed to see if we're going to believe the Democratic pundits.
That's so true. CEO of Wallin Opinion Research, Justin Wallin. Great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you.